creating its own antibody cocktail for COVID known as polytope therapy, which, if everything works well, fights all mutations of the virus. CEO Jennifer Bath helming the effort. Jennifer joins us now live. Jennifer, where do you and the company stand with this one, and how does one even begin to develop a therapy that neutralizes all strains and variants of this, I guess, still barely understood virus?
Great question, Liz. I'll start with where we needed to start to do this. This was our goal from the beginning, all the way back in January, when we understood that SARS-CoV-2 had obviously become an issue and was likely to become a pandemic. One of the things that we really focused on, understanding that was an RNA virus, it was likely to be something that would be with us for a while, and RNA viruses have the tendency to change and mutate over time. It's one of the ways that they escape the immune system of humans in kind of a co-evolutionary battle. So what we set out to do first and foremost in order to develop a cocktail therapy was to generate what we believe is really the world's largest, most comprehensive program to tackle this, knowing that we would need literally thousands and thousands of antibodies to get to the point where we could generate effective cocktails to put together to fight this virus. And so, one of the reasons for doing that for these cocktail therapies is because it is widely known that when you're working with an RNA virus, and you can expect those mutations to occur, these cocktail therapies really have a much better chance of protecting or treating, either one, protecting or treating against multiple strains or multiple variants of the virus as it does continue to mutate and change over time.
And in some cases, there are hundreds of mutations. So can you give us an example where this polytrope therapy that you have in the past has actually worked to be able to be more of a shotgun versus a single bullet against a virus?
Absolutely. Actually, a great example, and this is perfect timing, is with Ebola. When we were really struggling with Ebola a number of years back during an outbreak, the first antibody that went into use in the field was a single monotherapy antibody. Second one that came around that was looking more efficacious was 2 antibodies. And then eventually a tri-antibody cocktail was produced that was aiming specifically at the same exact purpose, reducing the ability of the virus to escape these therapies as they're put forward. And just 2 days ago, the FDA actually approved that 3-antibody cocktail against Ebola.
Oh, that's great news, certainly. And we know we've wrapped our arms in some cases around Ebola, but as still occasionally we have outbreaks. I want to get to this Gilead story in the World Health Organization regarding remdesivir. Who's wrong? I know that you don't know the inside details, but Gilead says the WHO is incorrect. President Trump has spoken of the very salubrious effects he felt after he got remdesivir and Regeneron, by the way. But, what is the assessment here when the WHO says there is a study that shows doesn't really save people from COVID death?
Yeah, that's a very good question. With respect to the evidence of what we've seen come out based on the remdesivir study, which is aiming to block the virus from replicating, is that the biggest impact and statistically significant impact was that it reduced the hospitalization of the patients, the stay of hospitalization for the patients that had received the experimental drug. And remdesivir is something that's been around for a while. It is well understood, but it has had conflicting data out of different clinical trials. So really, the biggest endpoint that was touted and showed clinical significance was a reduction in about 5 days for those that received remdesivir versus the control placebo group. There was a minor reduction in mortality rate. I did not actually see statistics offered up for that. The general conclusion brought forward by the WHO was that it was not statistically significant reduction in mortality.
Jennifer, not only are you a scientific expert here, and you, of course, were in the Netflix documentary about pandemics, but you are also a businesswoman because this is a publicly traded company that's headquartered in Canada. It is a small cap, but I was looking at some of your financials. You guys have what appears to be just a couple of million in cash on the books. I mean, don't you need more money? And how are you going to plow ahead without that liquid capital, or at least a bigger pile of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. So we bring in about $15 million Canadian in revenue. Most of that is actually based on us producing these types of antibodies for the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. So we do exactly what we're doing here for them, and the company's been doing that for about 35 years, but has really begun to pick up momentum in the last 2 years. And we have somewhere around $9 million in cash in the till. And what we really focused on here is, we're in very active communication with the U.S. government and Canadian governments pertaining to the advancements as we begin to get closer and closer to clinical trials. And another thing that's really been interesting for us over the last couple of months is just numerous collaborations also coming together as we look at different formulations and different types of what we call a format of an antibody. And collaborations around the formulation manufacturing and then also potential commercialization rights. And so there are definitely companies that have expressed an interest in coming on board as sponsors and partners.
Well, as we like to say here at Fox Business, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. We like the little guys who are fighting away. Jennifer, good luck to you and your team. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Immuno Precise is the company. All right, DC